Recording has started.
All right. So welcome to the Adelaide Microsoft IT Pro Community User Group Meetup for December 2023, last one for the year. We've got Pete from Microsoft to present for us today. I'm Andrew Young, a consultant at Catalyst / Canada Business Services, ANZ. I'm Brett Moffat, I'm a Systematech IT consulting firm. He is an apology today. He's had an ankle recon recently and some issues with that, so he's just seen the doctor. So wish him all the best and speedy recovery. Quick acknowledgements. So yeah, acknowledging that we're meeting on the lands of the Ghana people and that we pay respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Quick housekeeping. When you weigh in, you would have noticed that there are the lifts out there. So to the right of that is the stairwell, and at the other side there is the toilets through the second hallway. Slide intentionally blank. So the last month, yeah, I'm still wearing a moustache of some awkward thing from November. So the team did manage to raise just over $1,400 for November. So good effort towards mental health, suicide prevention, and various men's cancers. November was pretty big. So we had Microsoft Ignite and the European SharePoint conference. So I'll probably run through probably what I think is 5 of the more important announcements from that. Yeah, so moving forward, the first one would be SharePoint Premium. If you've been catching or following the story since 6 years ago or so, it used to be called Cortex and then Syntax and then Microsoft Syntax. Now it's just called SharePoint Premium to make it more streamlined for message branding. It's all about that content AI, so the experiences that you've got with the content, processing that content, so things like documents getting generated, signatures or e-signatures, so using things like DocuSign or Adobe to have your client sign off policies. We've also got a bunch of content governance, so on top of the data classifications and labeling and attention and all that, there is more of a handle on the access and the privileges. So part of that is the SharePoint Advanced Management features, so you can get reporting on, I guess, what is being shared externally. So a lot of times people just going have a share link and you don't know what's being shared out to the public. So that'll give you a nice pane of glass to kind of keep track of what's being shared, either intentionally or unintentionally. They did mention more on M365 archive and backup services. So these are both in paid preview. So they're in place archive and backup features using firstly SharePoint and then M365. So you get mailboxes, Teams, and sites and all that. So they're running alongside what you've got there. So it's not an external storage per se. So the archive service does rely on you having some quota left. So as soon as you go over that quota, it starts charging you more. I'm curious to see where that goes. So we'll give that a few more months to make it generally available and get more information on that one. Backup itself, it's got a bunch of partners from launch. So popular names like Veeam, they'll have their own client and on top of that, so you get their terms and support on top of the native backup services. Just a few things there. So the features I just briefly went through before, there are help with billing notice, so there is per user licensing, and then there's something based, so depending on which features, it'll be charged differently depending on how many times it's called in that service. So yeah, it's heaps to go through there, so I won't cover that right now because we don't have the time of things when you present to us. The other thing is SharePoint Embedded. So this one used to be called SharePoint Repository Services, or those lines. So it was a headless version of the SharePoint platform. So you can use the storage and the processing power and hide behind it. So API calls and stuff to make it do things for you. This is more commonly known to be the storage or the playground for Microsoft Designer and Microsoft Loop. So it kind of keeps those workspaces and images there. So you don't normally get access to that. So that's, yeah, it's not quite available for Australians yet, but coming next year. So roughly July, you probably hear a lot more about that one, and probably get a lot more. It sounds not clear. Is that just me or? So the Microsoft Loop app is now generally available. So people who are familiar with Notion, yeah, it's happy days. There are a bunch more components released. So things like Whiteboard and Planner have got their own components now. The Loop components are now available in Microsoft Teams channels, finally. So a lot more collaboration going on. Yeah, just good times. On top of that, so Microsoft Planner is the new name for tasks. Planner plans all the things that have been previously renamed and rebranded so many times. So yeah, the app within Teams, which is tasked by Planner and To Do, that would just be called Microsoft Planner. And what they're doing is they're taking project for the web and just calling that Planner and kind of just grabbing everything and putting it into one app. So yeah, there's different types of task tracking. So you have boards, your agile sprints, agile DevOps, and all that. They're coming into this app one way or another. See here, straight from the Teams app, you can manage all your projects and sprints and all that. So pretty cool. Yeah, the bit I was talking about just more about the Loop components. Oops. Yeah. Let that loop back. So if you grab the link from the plan in Planner, what you're going to call it now, and stick it into the loop, and then that becomes a new loop component, and then copy the link for the component and stick it into another part of the loop. So a different workspace for a page, and it kind of carries across, and everybody can work on it. And it's a live plan that's worked on. So yeah, well, this is spring, but I think that's more autumn our time. So next quarter or two, the new naming conventions, the project for the web. If you were paying for a license, there's some premium features in that. So I believe that's being called Planner Premium. So things like Gantt charts, etc., they're included through the extra licensing. But you should see and all familiar different types of task tracking features across this new app. Yeah, actually, I'll go back a step. So Bing Chat, if you're familiar with Bing Chat Enterprise, Microsoft have renamed to Microsoft Copilot to bring you into this new naming convention of everything. So the next thing they did was they've taken Power Virtual Agents, which is your chatbots, and they're just rebranding it to Microsoft Copilot Studio. So you'll be creating the Copilot, small c, instead of virtual chatbots. So essentially the Copilot logo, which is this very colorful thing. Yeah, you're getting this new fancy what that is, but yeah, that'll be extending what you've got currently in Microsoft Copilot. So Bing Chat Enterprise, it only have a limited amount of access to your information. So part of what Copilot Studio does on top of creating these Power Virtual Agents is you can create plugins and extensions to improve or enhance the Bing Chat Enterprise experience. And it can extend to Copilot from Microsoft 365. Assuming there's sound, should play video. There's no sound. That's fine. It's just loud and obnoxious music. Yeah. So that's the Bing Chat Enterprise interface, and it hasn't got information. So that's when you go into the Copilot Studio, and you can go and grab stuff like T's, plugins, etc. And then you build out your conversations and topics like you would with our virtual agent, but then you've got access to a whole bunch of AI powered services. So yeah, cool. So that's powerful about music. So yeah, the slides in and replaces the sample text with useful information. Yeah, so cool. I have been having a bit of a play in here and testing out the generative answers. So you can point Copilot to SharePoint or OneDrive and say, hey, look through these sites or these documents and give me some information. And it does seem to work. And yes, licensing it's still a thing. So it was part of virtual agents. It's now going to be Microsoft Copilot Studio. It's a tenant license. You just get the one license, and then you get included licenses for your users. So you need to assign them to users in order for them to actually be able to create these copilots. And it's going to be message-based consumption versus sessions. So sessions used to be 60 minutes or 100 back and forth, where it's going to be 25,000 messages to start with per month. And using a generative AI response will consume twice as many. So just be wary of that, and you can get add-ons to get additional messages for the month. That's just 5 of the main, 5.5, 6 main things from Ignite. So catch up on all the announcements and updates from the book of news. I'll send out all the links and stuff afterwards. So just feel free to go through that. And I'm just going to smash through the remaining content here. So applied skills, we talked about this last time. The new type of credential from Microsoft. So you've got your certifications and exams, and now you've got these free online assessments where you spend maybe up to 2 hours showing you know how to do specific things. So there are a bunch already available launched. So it's across Azure, AI, Power Platform, and some other things, security even and compliance. And then a few more AI focused ones came out during Ignite, and there's going to be a bunch more coming soon. So keep an eye on these. If you're doing an exam that's daunting, which sometimes they are, and challenging as they are, these are actually just as, I find just challenging. So if you've got a couple of hours to spend, yeah, have a crack at it. You do need to wait, I think, 48 hours if you do not complete it the first time, and then potentially a week after each attempt that you do not pass. A couple of new exams and certifications coming out in the new year. So using Microsoft Fabric and develop a Business Central Dynamics. Stuff that's retiring, some old legacy naming products there, so just storage and stuff. Nothing too exciting. I've got stuff that's coming out of extended support, which is a bit more spicy. So you still got server 08 or 12, like you to do something about it. There are extended security updates, but just make sure you get the latest ones. You are running alternate software through Azure only. Other communities, so we've got some local Adelaide user groups, and we've got some better online frequent. So yeah, there's been the links, so sign up for them as well. What's coming? We've got a couple of events. So there's a Viva Engage Festival hosted by Swoop Analytics tomorrow. Microsoft Stream Classic retires in February. There's Digital Workplace Conference in New Zealand end of February. And we've got some dates for the Fabric Community and that conference next year, both in Vegas. So likely some. Yeah. Good for time. Not too bad. All right, so we've got Pete from Microsoft, Pete Calvert rather, Microsoft, to talk about Copilots, steering through work with Crystal on Pride. So I did try to get a more interesting logo, couldn't get around to it. So I asked Brent to use Mid-Journey, and got some interesting photos. So it's going to take us on a journey from being in the Lost or the Fog of War, and then taking us out in the clear skies and being Maverick and Tom Gunn. And more here there. Yeah, well, it's very complimenting. I don't know how you want to do this. Have you got your slides?
Yeah, it's the same bit. Just keep going.
Oh, okay. It's come back to my slide. So yeah, if you want to reach out, follow me, and all that jazz. QR code, my LinkedIn, Twitter, website, etc. And we've got Brett's details there if you want to follow up with him. Actually, who needs time to go back? So we'll share the details afterwards. Okay, that's me. Stuff. Thank you, sir.
Praise.
All right, just checking that the sound is a bit clearer online now. Okay. And hi to everyone who's joined us online and everyone in room. Thank you for coming in. Anyone here for the first time? Oh, lovely. Welcome. Good to see you. My name is Pete Calvert. I've been with Microsoft now for a bit over 6 years. Most of the time was as a solution architect. I've shifted last year into a support engineer role. So looking after Windows, I am now legally able to call you up and say, I'm from Microsoft, you've got a problem with your computer. Although I won't do that because we don't operate that way. So if anyone does ring you up and say, I'm from Microsoft, you've got a problem with your computer, you know it's not us. Having said that, everything that I'm going to cover today, I'm not speaking on behalf of Microsoft. While I work for Microsoft and therefore have a vested interest in you buying our products, I'm not in sales, even though we're all supposed to be in sales. Some of the slides in the deck, I give credits to Thomas Abel and Philip Meyer for pinching them from their decks, but I'm not here to sell you Copilot. Does anyone feel like this when it comes to AI and Copilot at the moment? My brain is full. There's just so much information out there. So what I'm hoping to do today is to take you on a little bit of a journey to settle things down a bit. Just say, what do I need to really focus on amongst the fire hose of information? Okay. Does that sound right? Good, I'm getting nods, because if it wasn't and people going no, then we might as well finish early and have an early day. Okay. Productivity and creativity have really accelerated with AI. Right? When I say accelerated, we mean accelerated. How long ago was it that ChatGPT was announced? Anyone know?
1 year.
1 year?
1 year.
12 months ago. It's only been 1 year. We haven't been able to escape from it since then, and it's not likely to change in the near future. Okay? In fact, to get to 100 million users only took ChatGPT 3 months. I shudder to think what it is now. And it's not just users. We have lots of businesses that have started up with a ChatGPT or AI focus. It can be a bit overwhelming. In fact, you might feel like there is a tsunami of AI coming. And if you're not feeling swamped now, you very soon will be. There is no escaping this. So for many who are feeling overwhelmed by the acceleration of GPTs, and you're starting to think past this optimistic glow of potential opportunities, what's next? All right, there must be a catch somewhere, mustn't there? We start thinking about the risks. What are the risks of using ChatGPT and other AI engines? This is where the heavy thinkers are thinking at the moment. Right? We need to do something about this AI stuff. We're not prepared. Does anyone feel prepared? No hands up. All right, I'm assuming there's no hands up in the or thumbs up in the the chat. Andrew will let me know if there is or not. What some people do is they go, we can block it, right? We're going to block ChatGPT from our workplace. We're going to block it in our schools. We're going to have policies that are going to stop this until we can find out what we need to do. Is that going to work? No, this is King Canute. He tried to stop the tide coming in. It wasn't very successful. And you know why businesses and schools aren't successful in blocking ChatGPT? Humans. Humans are amazingly adaptable. They will find ways around the rules that are put in place. Doesn't matter what it is, they will find ways around it. No, I won't ask for a show of hands. I don't want anyone to necessarily out themselves in case you've been the one. But if in your mind you're thinking, yeah, I've experienced this and I reckon I'm fairly resourceful and I can find ways around it, this is what happens. What this does is it leads to ungoverned, uncontrolled, and unauditable activity. ChatGPT, and this is why the adoption was so fast, made AI feel real and personal to people. It was something that we could interact with. Has anyone not actually ever played around with ChatGPT? I bet you've heard stories. All right. This is the main reason why it's very accessible. You go to Bing. You all use Bing as your search engine, don't you? I use Bing as my search engine, and it's not just because I work for Microsoft. I reckon the less I'm feeding information about myself and my searches to a company who exists to sell information about me to other organizations who want to sell me more stuff, the more control I have. And Bing works for me. So, but there is the chat icon at the top of the Bing page where you can engage in having a conversation. It's personal. It tries to be even more personal. Some might say it's even getting creepy. But there are lonely people out there. They like this personal interaction. For some people, it can get really, really personal. For those of you who've not seen the movie Her, with Joaquin Phoenix having Scarlett Johansson in your ear as an AI, was certainly very attractive to him. But I've got a message for you. Despite all these perceived risks and worries and other things like that, don't panic. Bonus points if you know where this comes from. Anyone? Yes. Anyone not know where it comes from? All right, you have homework to do. You need to go and find The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you haven't listened to it, or watched the TV show, or listened to the records, or read the book, come and see me afterwards and I'll show you where I've got copies of the BBC broadcasts. In order to reduce the anxiety, we sort of want to get a bit of an idea about what people are talking about. So I'm going to do an acronym check with you. Those in the online in the chat can play along if you want. I won't necessarily see your response, but Andrew will. He can give you thumbs up if respond. GAI. Does anyone know what GAI stands for? Generative artificial intelligence, or also, what else can the G stand for? General artificial intelligence. Sometimes they like to distinguish between the two by either writing out generative fully or saying Gen AI, which could be general as well, but that's just the way people think. All right. General artificial intelligence is different from specific artificial intelligence, which we've actually had for quite a while. We had it from back in the 80s. Specific artificial intelligence was also called expert systems. They were designed to use a specific database of information, and you'd feed in things. Medical ones, for example, you would feed in particular symptoms, and it would run through the database and come back with possible diseases. Or engineering ones, you'd pop in different specifications, and it would pop out the materials and other things that would be able to be worked with, standards and other things. General artificial intelligence is more what, well, we hope most of us are like. Yeah. We might be good in particular areas, but we can operate broadly. If you give us something that's outside of our area of speciality, we can still apply some smarts to it. So yes, general or generative artificial intelligence. So chat GPT, what's the GPT stand for? Generative pre-trained transformers. That's a mouthful, isn't it? That's why we say chat GPT instead of chat generative pre-trained transformer. No one would use it then. A generative pre-trained transformer is something that is pre-trained on a model. It's generative, it goes through iterations and it transforms things from one state to another. The better the model that it's got, the more it's got to be able to transform your question into a response. And it's been getting better and better. Might have heard of ChatGPT 3 and then 3.5 and then 4. Microsoft's Copilot, which used to be Bing Chat, has also gone through iterations. There are other AIs out there that are also operating on GPT model that are also improving. They use NLP to do their transforming. We all know what NLP is. Natural language processing. This is why sometimes the ChatGPT responses, the output, reads so well. There was a story in the Vatican of the school that they sort of run in there. Catholic schools were worried about the students using ChatGPT to cheat on their essays and assignments by getting ChatGPT to write their assignments for them. And they're asking one of the experts in the field who works with the Jesuits there, how can they discover which students are doing this? And then a few days later, he came back and said, don't worry, I've got the answer. The ChatGPT answers are so much better and easier to read. The more this goes on, and if you are training it with your own style, which we'll get to later, it can start to emulate, it can learn to emulate your own way of communicating. But at the moment, the general models that are out there, ChatGPT and other things, open systems, will tend to be using their information that they're getting from huge numbers of sources, including lots and lots of books, Shakespeare, Dickens, you name it. They are using LLMs. LLMs are large language models, as distinct from small language sets or small language models. And the LLMs are getting bigger and more complex and are shifting into other languages as well. the way that they improve themselves is through RLHF. Might be a bit trickier. This is reinforcement learning from human feedback. We're actually training these models to improve themselves, right? They're doing it through the interactions that we have. The more interactions that we have, the better they improve. And this is why organizations who have got GPT models and are trying to sell them to you are wanting you to use their model, because the more that you use their GPT system, the more it learns through interaction and feedback. Right? Let's think about where this is going. One of the algorithms that it uses for reinforcement learning is PPO. Not expecting anyone to know this. Proximal policy optimization. In order to improve, it says, am I getting a negative response or a positive response from this interaction? If I'm getting a positive response, rather than taking a huge jump in that direction to where I think is optimal for interacting with that person, I'm going to take a small jump. I'm going to gradually creep up on where I think the goal is, because the danger is if it goes too far, you're going to turn someone off. All right? That's when it really gets creepy. So we're trying to remove the creep factor, and most of the reinforcement learning systems that are occurring these days are using PPO. So when you are interacting with a ChatGPT or some other AI model, this is the way that it's operating. And it's not just language, it's not just text. Does anyone use DALL-E? This isn't actually an acronym, right? But do you know where the word DALL-E comes from? Anyone? It's actually a portmanteau. You know what a portmanteau is? Portmanteau is two words put together. And in this case, the two words are WALL-E and Salvador Dali. Dali because of the pictures it generates with the weird looking hands originally. And WALL-E because it's a cute little robot that everybody wants to play with. Do we feel we've got a bit more of a handle on how things are operating in this space now? Good, I'm getting some nods. Hopefully there's some thumbs up online as well. Right, let's move this to the organizational perspective. What do we need to do to prepare for this era of AI, this tsunami of stuff that's coming to us? One, you need to know what your organization's goals are for AI. And you want to be as specific as possible. Now, you're not going to be able to be prescriptive here. You might say, oh, this is our first list of goals. This is what we would like AI to do. You will need to refine them, massage them, shape them. And over time, they will change. They will adjust. Humans are adaptable. We need to be adaptable too as far as organizational goals are concerned. These are the opportunities. If you did a SWOT analysis, these are the opportunities that organizations will have. What opportunities can we leverage AI for in order to meet our goals? Second, what are your organization's pain points? These are the threats. These are the things that might be coming at you. And one might be, we're just not ready. There's too much information coming in. We're getting conflicting stories coming in from different places. How do we manage this? None of my people want to use the ChatGPT engine that we've done. They all want to use something else. You know? They all want to use Google instead of Bing. Might be a pain point. Live with that. Once again, this is something that you can't be too prescriptive of. You might identify some, but they will change over time. Remember the acceleration that's happening in terms of creativity and productivity with AI. This is going to change as well. Now you might feel, all right, this is still going to be a little bit finger in the air when we're not quite nutting things down. What can we do to help get a handle on the situation? Well, the next thing we want to look at is what are our current capabilities in AI? This is something we should be able to have a good idea of, and it might require asking around. Let's find out. Who knows what about what? Does your organization have a data strategy? Does anyone know whether their organization has a data strategy? A few? Does anyone know that they don't have a data strategy? Or if you don't know if they've got a data strategy? All right. This includes things like, what do we do if an e-discovery request comes in? What do we do from compliance and records management and retention issues? How do we mark things as confidential? You know, how do we do things as sensitive or personal information? Do we have a mechanism for being able to control, tag, mark, comply, record our data? Do we have a way of identifying what is our intellectual property? Can we identify if somebody else is infringing our copyright or trademark elsewhere? These are all part of data strategy. If you don't have this in place, you run the real risk of data leakage without you necessarily understanding what's happening and what the impact will be. The last piece of preparing for the era of AI. Does your organization have the necessary infrastructure and resources to support AI initiatives? For some, you might not know. For some, you won't know until you work out what initiatives you're going to have. If we're going to fall on the side of M365 Copilot, you already have Azure Active Directory, Entra, sorry, should be saying, Microsoft 365. You actually probably already have a whole stack of resources that will support the way that Copilot should be running, as we'll see shortly. Okay. In order to be able to then adopt AI, we need to sort of come up with some rules about how things are going to operate. So what rules should we use? Because there aren't any globally accepted standards rules out there. Have you heard of these? 3 rules of robotics. Who came up with them? Asimov. He had a few stories where he jiggled them around a bit. What happens if we put the rules in different orders? And it was disaster. The disaster happens. Even with the 3 rules as they are, things don't always work out. So what people want to do is they want to add more rules. But if we add more rules, are we making things even more likely to break? Well, we just won't tell people that we're popping in extra rules to protect the senior officers of the organization in case the AI goes rogue. We'll see in Robocop. At least get the reference. Okay, good. So the suggestion is for enterprise scale AI, something that we're going to be using inside an organization and for organizational productivity and creativity, as opposed to just playing around on the public internet. We might want to have some directives, some rules that we tend to follow. And these are 4 that I think are probably a good basis to start with. First up, your service access, the access to your organization's AI, your organization's GPT that looks after your information and has access to your knowledge bases and your systems, should be isolated from every other organization or user. Shouldn't be anyone else being able to get the keys to your kingdom. Second, your data should not be used to train the foundational AI models. We'll get to this shortly as to why this is important. Third, your data should be protected by comprehensive enterprise compliance and security controls. You might be surprised at how much access to corporate information you have. And that's not because of AI or because of other things. It's because of the security systems that you have in place. At Microsoft, we're very big on having security policies and controls in place. There's a lot of things I don't have access to. There's a lot of conditional policies, which means I can get access to them on a work machine or something that's been enrolled as a work machine, but I can't access them from my personal device or other devices that aren't enrolled. So, do you have a protection mechanism that can be leveraged for your data? Because AI should be operating within the same rules. You don't want to be building a separate security system and security controls for AI's access. It should be within the same vein as ordinary person access. Okay. And last, and Philip, if you're watching or watching the recording, I added this to your list of 3. Sources should be exposed. We should know where the information comes from. Because if there are inaccuracies that are identified, look at something and say, that doesn't seem right, or I'm not sure about that, we can trace back to where it comes from. And if that's in a system of record or a system of source of truth, that's a problem. Typically, we don't have the AI models feeding information in to these sources. They're just reading from the sources. But you put garbage into those sources, you're going to get garbage out. Does this sound like a fairly fair set of rules? Anybody think of anything else that I might have missed? If something comes to mind, please let me know. I like to be open-minded. I can't think of everything, but this is going to be a moving list, something that will change over time. But this is where I think it's a fairly good start. And if you don't already have this surfaced when you're looking at the data that we are exposing internally to ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or other things like that, if we don't have this in place, there be dragons. Okay. And don't just leave the choices up to the people who are the techies, who are the ones who are really good with these AI systems, right? For what may seem to be fairly obvious reasons to everybody else. So let's drill down a little bit. Capabilities. What do you reckon is the #1 capability for using GPT, AI, Copilot? Sorry? Anyone got any ideas? No one on chat got any ideas? All right. Knowing what to put in here. This is a prompt. Knowing how to write good prompts is a skill set that really needs to be developed if you want to get the most out of AI. Because if you don't, and all you've got is a prompt, and you enter information that is something like this, there could be a world of problems. Does anybody not get this reference? It's the movie War Games from the 1980s. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's fantastic, right? Get a copy. The consequences of, I'd like to play a game. This must be a games company prompt. I won't go for chess or bridge or something else. I'll play global thermonuclear war, actually hit into the US Armed Forces defense system and almost started a global thermonuclear war. I won't spoil the rest of the movie. Those of you who've seen it know it's a good ride. But don't panic, okay? Biggest challenge that we often find with organizations, as how do we understand these models, is where does our information go? When we put these prompts in, and we need to be specific to get good answers from it, which means we're feeding information in these AIs. What happens to that information? Where does it go? Now, the next two models that, thank you, Philip, again, who put these together, are very simplified, but I think you'll get the idea. So the open internet, public GPTs, when you put your prompt in, it goes to the foundational model, which is trained on its model and data store, and it will add your prompt to that data store to improve the set of information that's in there, and then feed responses back. And then based on your response to its response, it will then be able to adjust the model to say, this was a good match, we'll move in that direction, or it wasn't a good match, we'll disassociate these two from each other. This is the way these things learn. Remember, it's generative. It's pre-trained, it's transforming stuff, but it's generative. It's learning using that natural language processing. It's like sentiment analysis on X, which used to be Twitter, another social media. There are tools out there that can do this analysis. Did anyone see a problem with this for corporate information? I'm getting nods. Good. No shaking of heads. No shaking of heads. So instead, an idea perhaps for having a better model is where the foundational model that we've got as a training model or training models that we can apply to. We can have, as talked about with Copilot Studio, we can have other little GPTs that are plugged into other systems that can then feed off this. Right? Still corporate information. It's stuff that we have exposed explicitly through these plugins and custom GPTs. But it's here with the training models, not a single model. And anytime you have a prompt, you're asking a question, it goes through all of the security controls, all of the identity governance and compliance through to here, but we carve off your prompt and pop it in a little cache, a little temporary cache. This is just for you. This is so that it can build upon the information that you have provided beforehand without going, sorry, what was that again? I forgot. Well, responds, puts the response here. We had this little working store. It's like cookies on your computer, but not used as nefariously as cookies on your computer. It's a little working cache, kept separate from the training models. That response then comes back. It might be augmented or changed based upon your personal information, security controls, and other things. And then the loop continues. But when you have finished using it, that goes. Any questions? If you've got questions as we go through, by all means, stick up a hand and interrupt. If it's going to be a long answer, we might delay it till the end. But I don't want anyone to feel like they're being lost. Cool? Okay. Now remember, one of the capabilities that we're talking about is the prompt, is being able to describe things accurately. And sometimes you might pop in a prompt that reveals an answer that could be correct, but you're just not quite sure because you're not sure what the question is. The ultimate question to life, the universe, and everything. It's again, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for those who haven't experienced it. 42 is the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. Problem is that they didn't know what the question was. So, GPT prompt capabilities will be, for your organization, a determining factor for realizing productivity from those GPTs, getting the most out of them. Next, resources. We're going to focus on resources now. And we're going to look at your sources. I thought that was a more interesting picture than SOURCES. And I love chili. Consider your sources, the different sources that you've got. Are you exposing those sources that need to be exposed to the right people? Do you have the security controls around those sources of information, whether they are line of business applications, whether they're databases, whether they're IP, whether it's other things, right? Financial information, HR information. Consider the sources that you have and make sure that you've got those security controls around them. Sources can have biases because they were created by people who have biases. And sometimes those biases will then come out in the responses that we get from the information that we're putting in. And while to err is human, to really stuff things up takes a computer. So you can really expand and exacerbate any biases that might be in your sources if they're there. It's the horrible story of the Xbox Kinect. Remember what the Kinect was? It was a little camera that you'd stick on your Xbox game console, and it would recognize you. And I recognize a player, and they'd obviously trained it on white people, and it didn't recognize a young black girl when she was playing with her white friends. It identified all of the white kids and didn't recognize her as being human. So consider the biases that might be in your sources, because once again, what we put in, that's what we're going to get out. And these things have no morals. They've got no ethics. Sharing. To use your GPTs effectively, it's a collaborative exercise, right? Benefits really happen if there's a way to share the tips and best practices that you've got. There's another product called Copilot Lab, which basically allows you to practice prompts, try and prompts, and then share with other people. This works for me. This is good for this. If you want to do this, then use this prompt. All right. Share with others. These tools, GPT, is not really there for the hardline IT people. They can definitely use it, but it's there for everybody. We're trying to democratize technology use for work productivity. and the more who can share it. So consider how it's being shared and who it's being shared with. And when we're talking about how we are sharing stuff, the way that Copilot works is is using the Microsoft graph. It's got the user at the center, and it's using your preferences, your settings, your security permissions, and other aspects to prioritize and show how things are being shown. These are all resources that are already there in Microsoft 365 and on Entra if you've got them. So talk to your friendly Microsoft person if you need extra help, or there's plenty of stuff online. There's the Microsoft 365 user group, which I believe a fair number of people are members of. There are stacks of stuff there, but I didn't want to drown you in a whole lot of product information and fire hose of information. These are the main things that I think are going to help you get ready for thinking about how do we introduce and use and leverage AI, minimizing the risks and improving the experience for everybody. Okay. So the thing is, get on board. State government in the report of the Select Committee on Artificial Intelligence, November 14, it was released, had 15 recommendations. For those of you who are in the know, one of those recommendations, recommendation 8, was the Department for Industry, Innovation and Science, and they're not using Oxford commas there, unfortunately, consider the introduction of a growth accelerator to accelerate the adoption of AI technologies in industry. The South Australian government does not want to be left behind as far as AI is concerned. They want to be a leader, particularly in specific AI areas within the country. Anyone who's not on board is actually going to be causing problems with this. Anyone who is on board and is thinking about these things gets to be potentially one of the drivers. You get to start steering things in the direction that's going to assist and help you and help develop your skill sets, rather than, hopefully you're not the person who goes, oh, all I've got left to do now is complain. If you are interested, there is a stack more reading information. Some of it might be relevant for you, some of it might be very relevant for many of you. Some of you, because you're in the state here, sorry for those of you who are outside the state, but these things can travel. It will impact you in one way, shape or form because of the environment within which you operate. So it is good to be aware of what's happening at the government level and what is being pushed. Okay. Finally, the takeaways. AI transforming business is inevitable. Can we agree on that? I want to make sure that you're in the driver's seat. Copilot is named Copilot for a reason. It's not putting generative AI into the driver's seat. It wants to be there as a co-pilot for you so that you are still in control. And to be in control, you need to be proactive. You need to take action rather than allowing things to just happen to you. So have a plan, but be prepared to adjust, because it's going to be a rocky road. There are things that are going to change at a very rapid pace. You need to be able to be not so baked in that you've got the ability to adjust. Yeah. Treat AI like any other business system. Same security rules apply. Don't make special cases for it. Right? Every exception is a potential security weakness. Because security should be foundational. You cannot put security on later and expect it to work. Share learnings and best practice. These groups are fantastic for doing that. Please do. We don't know everything. Consider specialized GPTs and plugins. By narrowing the set in a particular area, you can get more appropriate responses for those specific things that you are interested in. And by building security around that, you're minimising data leakage as well.
Question on that, if I
Yeah.
could. How do you know it was a vetted GPT though? So if I want to start my own business in whatever it is and I want to purchase a GPT model, how do I know when it's going to be contained and where's the governance around? Yeah, I know President Joe Biden did the executive order on AI security. That's super huge. But then how does that flow down to me as a small, medium business in Australia, for example?
Very, very good question. Depends upon the relationship with the vendor who's actually providing that that GPT.
Yeah.
I'd be asking questions. I'd be saying, what assurances can you give? How can I audit this? How can I show that this is actually operating the way that you say it operates? I'll put Microsoft on the spot and say, by all means, ask those same questions about Copilot. Right? Have the discussions. Right? They have to be said. If they're not being said, then there's free rein for those people to just walk in and bypass your rules. But ask the questions, right, for those who are actually building them and say, what assurances have you built in? How can we be sure?
And similar to Agile, Intra, government and defence, because obviously we've got Fleet and a huge defence presence in South Australia. Is that like is there a separate model that's exclusive for those domains?
I don't have the answers for those specific ones. Said I'm a Windows support engineer. I'm not a program manager. Hi, Thomas, for M365 and Copilot in that regard. I will say, though, that the security controls shouldn't be any different for Copilot as they are for all the other systems. So put those same security systems should be leveraged for that. Because if there are different security systems in play, there's always gaps that appear between them, and that's where there are problems. So Copilot, particularly as far as Microsoft is concerned, has been built to leverage the same security and compliance controls and rules that you have for other systems. Okay, but absolutely ask the questions. And then finally, there's the work trend index. So if you just type into Bing Microsoft's work trend index, I'm sure it'll work in Google as well. There's a fantastic amount of information about hybrid working, about AI, about just that there's different trends, the way that people are working and changes in the workplace. Treasure trove of information. If you've got a few hours to kill, there's lots of rabbit holes that you can go down in that as well. Okay. Were there any questions from online?
Yeah, we have one from Mohammed. Does the model for enterprise mean that the quality is less than training?
How do we determine quality? All right. How do we determine the quality of the responses that we're getting? Quality of the responses that we're getting is very dependent upon prompts that we are asking and the sources that are providing that information. So the training that goes on is still using the same algorithms as the OpenAI, ChatGPT, Copilot. They're leveraging the same algorithms, the same learning models. It's the training data that provides the quality of the information that you're getting back. So hopefully that answers that question. And this is why it's so important to know your sources. Any questions? Thank you very much, everyone. We've just over 5, so hopefully I haven't kept you too late. I'll be around if you want to keep asking questions or talk about anything. Otherwise, I'll hand back to Andrew. No, that was it. Oh, was it? Sorry.
I think
Unless
that
it was
was
the
that's
first one.
that one.
That one?
Yeah. I don't know. Brett likes to have that one up.
Slideshow from current slide. The one?
Yeah, cool. Anyway, yeah, so thanks, Pete, and thanks everyone for coming in person particularly, and those of you online for your time. Yeah, so we're coming up to Christmas break and New Year's, so the next session will probably be in February. Keep an eye out for when that goes live. And yeah, if you've got any topics that you want to hear about, or if you have an interest in presenting, let us know. There should be links to fill out your expressions of interest on the event as well. So that is it for us now. So feel free to hang around and catch Pete or myself if you've got any burning questions regarding anything.
Hope everyone has a good holiday break as well, can get some time away from work and feel refreshed. And I said, if you're interested in learning more about AI and that, there's plenty of reading material out there, demos online and other things. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Holding.
Yeah, yeah.
No way you can say I. It's like, you don't have data about this. It's like, for me. So it's clear, like, this has come from data lake at some point. And they've
Yeah,
started,
yeah, yeah.
they've started scraping stuff and